It's time for wheat growers to assess crop quality and corn growers to check for nitrogen loss. And Michigan's Lieutenant Governor talks farm labor. I'm Janelle Brose, and this is Farm News 5.
Farm News 5 is brought to you by Ford.
As wheat harvest approaches, the Farm News 5 team traveled to Gratiot County with Michigan State University wheat specialist Dennis Pennington to assess crop quality and potential yields.
What we're seeing out in the field is quite a lot of variability, not only across the state geographically in terms of what the crop condition looks like, but also variability within a field based on variability in soil types, because we've had quite a lot of rainfall that has impacted the wheat crop in some form or another. Some parts of the state have had a few rains right along and the wheat crop is still nice and green and looking good. And there's other parts of the state that it's very, very dry and the wheat has dried up prematurely. Those are going to have, reduced yield and perhaps even some quality problems when they come in there with the combine for harvest. In this particular field, did you notice behind me some wheat that's looking a little bit taller, a little bit better looking wheat, probably greater yield potential and probably a little higher quality and test weight. Right in front of me here is some lighter textured soils, and this wheat right here burned up in the drought, and what happens is it dried down and kind of died prematurely before it had a chance to completely fill these grains out here, or the heads. And what happens in these cases a lot of times is what you get is a secondary infection called black sooty mold, which is what the black color that you're seeing on the heads and on the stems and on the leaves. While black sooty mold is not necessarily the problem, you will find it in areas that are problem areas in the field. And in this particular field, this area is kind of the gradation between some sandy soil and some a little bit heavier soil that was able to provide more moisture to the plant to grow. This leaves the farmer with some questions or issues like, how do I manage this for harvest compared to this if I got them in the same field? Segregate this out and try to sell it as feed wheat rather than as milling quality wheat. Take your best areas of the field and harvest those separately, and then sell those as milling wheat, so that way you'll get a much better price there than what you will for feed wheat.
Pennington offers some additional advice for growers with variable wheat fields.
Desiccation is an absolute no-no. This is a food crop. If you desiccate the wheat crop, it will be rejected at the elevator when you take it there. So do not desiccate the wheat. Let me repeat, do not desiccate wheat. The second option is where if you cut it off and windrow. They used to do that with dry beans. You cut the plants off, windrow them, and then they will dry down kind of like you're baling hay. The problem with that is if you get a rain when it's in the windrow, it's very difficult to get that dry, and you might actually increase your risk of harvest loss by having it in a windrow and you get a rain. Now, if you got lucky and could get it harvested before the rain came, then you might be okay. But I think you're better off leaving it standing in the field, because if you do get a rain, if it's standing, the crop will dry back out better than it will in a windrow. Most elevators have some programs to encourage early harvest. With the variability in the crop, you're going to have some crop that's at 18-20% moisture and some that's down 12-13. Get in there and harvest early, because many elevators have programs where they will actually pay the drying cost from 15 or 18% on down, and all you pay is just the shrinkage. So check with your local elevator where you're delivering your grain to, and see what programs they have available, and get out in the field and start harvesting as early as possible. That's one of the ways, or probably the best way, to deal with this variability that we have in the field this year.
Up next, the Lieutenant Governor talks ag labor at a West Michigan farm.
There's torque. Then there's 1,050 pound-feet of available best-in-class torque. There's towing. Then there's up to 37,000 pounds of available best-in-class towing. There's backing up a trailer. Then there's backing up with available class-exclusive Pro Trailer Backup Assist. In other words, there are trucks, and then there's the new Ford Super Duty, the most capable heavy-duty pickup truck ever built.
Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist paid a visit to West Michigan's Robinette's Apple House and Winery recently to hear direct from farmers on that side of the state. Top of mind for them, labor concerns.
Some of the issues likely to come up today surround labor. Been a lot of concern with having a labor supply here in the state, especially given some of the MDHHS orders that have come out and the effect that's had on folks being willing to come to the state of Michigan and work. Obviously, potentially unemployment benefits as well.
Throughout this entire pandemic, we've tried to have our public health protocols match the reality of COVID-19 on the ground. We recognize that it has impacted different industries differently. And so we're going to continue to be in conversation. We've been in direct conversation with the Farm Bureau about how the protocols will continue to evolve, make sure we understand what the farmers' needs are, and that's going to continue. Try to be as nimble as we possibly can be, and I think folks have seen that. And so I don't have like a specific date, but we're going to continue to work on it. And these conversations are important and they're urgent, so we're going to continue them.
For some in attendance, the COVID-19 pandemic created a disconnect from local lawmakers and the current administration. So getting that face time in real time was important.
I think this is the first opportunity a lot of people have had to meet with their elected officials face to face in almost over a year.
Coming up, it's time to check soil nitrate levels in cornfields.
We've got great growing conditions.
At Farm Bureau Insurance, the experience you get with our local trusted advisors is different. From financial security to a helping hand, Farm Bureau understands the experience matters. Find an agent who can protect what matters to you.
Over the past week, heavy rains across the state have led to denitrification and leaching in cornfields. B&M Crop Consulting's Bill and Missy Bauer offer tips for evaluating your nitrogen program.
So our concern is big denitrification events, big leaching events have happened, anywhere from 6 to 12 inches of rain over the last 13 days, depending on where you're at in the state. When we get that much rain, if your soils are saturated like that, if we got soils that got water sitting, just saturation, denitrification-wise, you can lose up to 60% of your nitrogen in 3 days. Right. when we're warm, and we're certainly warm. 75, 80 degree temps. That's the type of losses that you can see.
3 to 5 days, you can lose 60 to 80% of your nitrogen, and when you're sitting in a bad position, we've got great growing conditions, good moisture now, but we don't have enough N to finish a crop, and that's what we're out here trying to evaluate. So
we don't want to walk away from this crop. What we need to do next week, as things get a little bit drier, we can get back out into the fields, we want to pull some nitrate tests. So nitrate tests need to be pulled 1 foot deep, and that's really critical. It's a different soil probe than your normal one for soil testing. It's one that's going to be longer to get us a full foot. Now, if you've already side dressed, so you have banded nitrogen out there, which probably the majority of us do, we need to make sure that we pull uniform across the row. So we have just a little board that's our template. Our first hole is in the row, and then we got 5 holes going across to put us back in the row on the other side. So we want to make sure it's uniform as we go across there, knowing that one's in the middle. We should hit that band with one of them and not the other ones. We are staying away from the starter fertilizer band. Now, if you've just broadcast your nitrogen, you don't have anything banded, then you can just pull your cores random, just stay out of the starter fertilizer band. Once you get ready to pull these, you can't let these samples sit around. We got to get them into the lab right away. So you pull them in the morning, UPS them out that same day, or drive them to the lab if your lab is close to get the nitrate analysis done.
And it's important to tell your lab what depth you pull those samples at, because they're going to do the calculation based on the parts per million of nitrates, or we can even take ammonia test, how many parts per million ammonia we have in the soil right now, because some of that nitrate may have been converted already.
Right, so make sure we're pulling them at that foot, let your lab know it's at that foot. When you get the information back, then what are we looking for? If you get your numbers back and you're in that 10, 12, 13 parts per million of nitrate, that's not going to be enough to get us through the rest of the season here.
A lot of times those are baselines of which the microbes need to sustain life. So we got to make sure we're 25, 30 plus, depending on what you've put on so far and what your yield goals are, to make sure we have enough to finish this crop off.
So you get your numbers back, they're not good enough. Now what are we going to do? We're going to go in here and do some supplemental nitrogen. Maybe it's 30, 40, 50, 60 units, depending on what your numbers are saying. We've got to decide how much extra to put on. How are we going to do that? If it's, in this case, we're already at V9, V10 corn, we're going to be able to come in with Y drops. We're going to maybe look at aerial application with an airplane with urea and AMS, or we could maybe a high clearance dry spreader as well. So there's a lot of options to put nitrogen on. The key is we cannot walk away from this crop.
For more tips from Bill and Missy Bauer, visit MichiganFarmNews.com or the Michigan Farm Bureau channel on YouTube. With Farm News 5, I'm Janelle Brose. Have a great week of farming.